I'm Bob Goff, and my guest today is Darrell Henze, the former Quincy High School softball coach. Of course, last week he was dismissed from the program after a lengthy school board meeting, but you kind of knew what was happening going in, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, as I told people going into it that, it would be unprecedented for the school board to not follow the recommendation of the administration. I mean, I was hoping that maybe I could give them information to make them go, but typically you're not in a situation like that, especially since it was kind of in a short amount of time. Up until the time that I presented the information to the board, nobody had asked me to qualify any of it. So the only thing that the board had was the information that Lisa Otten had given them through the suspension letter.
And that was dated on January 24th, correct?
Correct.
And so you had no further meetings or anything with any school officials until you were at the board meeting. Was that correct, or you did?
No, I did not. I was banned from school property. I was told that I could not have contact with any of the players or contact with any of the coaches.
And then, so once you then, you went to the meeting, and you were sitting there where we were all kind of waiting to see what would happen, and then you got called back. And the school board was there. Were any other administrators there besides the school board?
Lisa Otten, Ryan Wicker, superintendent. Kimberly Wirt, I think she was
Kim
there.
Wirt, yeah, the board secretary, yes.
And then there was one other person that I don't remember, and then the school attorney.
Okay. Was the QHS principal, Jody Steinke, there?
No, he was not in the room.
So when you had the meeting with them and you were able to plead your case, I know you and I had talked briefly afterwards, you felt like maybe you weren't overly confident, but did you have at least a glimmer of hope after the meeting? Because you thought you had a couple people who,
I thought reading the body language when I left and watching, there was one board member, I can tell you right now, checked out early, who put down their pen, stopped taking notes, and sat back in the chair. I don't want to say female or
completely
male.
Understand.
But I felt like I had the attention of at least 4 of the remaining 5 through the entire thing. There was a lot of head nodding and like eyes opening and widening, and I'll be honest, there were a couple times I glanced over to the attorney and his eyes were wide. So I felt like when I walked out, or when Casey and I walked out, that it might be a 3-3 split. Or I felt like I was confident enough to think that there would be a 3-3 split, and I'm assuming the superintendent, if it had been, would have been the deciding vote. But
well, again, I mean, with also there were 6 members there because the 7th member, board member Jim Whitfield, was not in attendance. And a lot of times, what they will do is, I think they're just they take the recommendations, like you said. Normally, they just take these recommendations and run with it. I thought this was a bit of a special circumstance. I thought that perhaps they would, at least, again, be a little more understanding, if you will. Because again, in reading the letter that you provided to us, it seemed to me that they were more, it was the initial post, they weren't happy about, but it was you really didn't back down, and I think that's what kind of got you even more hotter. I think that's what turned up the heat on the water.
The only reason why I got fired is because I didn't say I'm sorry. That's the only reason. Nobody has said anything about or tried to prove what I said was wrong. The only reason why I was fired or let go is because I would not say I'm sorry.
Did the administrators, during your closed session meeting, did they say anything?
So when I met with them on the 23rd, and that was Lisa Otten, Jody Steinke, Chris Klingel, and myself, sat down, and Jody Steinke started. He leaned forward to the table and showed his phone. I could already tell he was angry, and said, "Did you post this?" And I said, "Yes, I did." And he said, "Is those your words?" And I said, "Yes, they are." And he said, nothing in that post is true. And I said, everything in that post is true. Tell me what's not true. I said, you know, I feel like there's been some deceit in this. I feel like information's been given to me and then not. I said, you yourself and Chris Klingel didn't even know about the third application that was submitted. Ryan Wicker did not tell you two that they made a third application or third submission for the life safety money. That's deceit. I mean, if we've got a line of communication and you're forcing us to go through the channels, you pass that information down. So when I got the letter, and what kind of caught me was one of the things she pointed out was my demeanor. Well, my demeanor, I feel like, is like what I'm right now. I never once raised my voice. I never once challenged anybody. I waited for them to ask me questions to qualify and give answers back where I was at, and nobody did. So, I mean, if demeanor is subjective, I mean, everybody's going to view it differently. For me, I did not feel like my demeanor was out of line. One of the things that was brought up was, or that I was being considered for dismissal, was for insubordination. Here's the fact. If you look up insubordination in the dictionary or on the school's own website that I printed off and gave to every member of the board, insubordination, including any failure to follow an oral or written directive. I was not directed to take my post down. I was asked if I would take my post down, and that's a big difference. Would gives you the option. Telling you to take it down, that's a directive. So then, and this is part that really gets me, is Lisa Otten highlighted one sentence out of a much larger context of where I said the only way to get things done around here is to throw bitch fits. Now, nobody asked me to qualify that sentence either. But what I said leading into that, I said for 10 years I have done everything that's been asked for me to do. I have gone through the proper channels. I have stood up for this school. I have stood up for this program. I have done what's been told me as far as what to do. I have asked repeatedly for certain things and denied. And I said, but it would seem that the only way to get anything done around here is to throw the biggest bitch fit. And so that being taken out of context and presented to the board, and then with the insubordination, that's when I decided about the week before, I think it was on a Wednesday or Thursday, before I reached out to Shelley Arns and asked and said, I cannot attend the board meeting as of right now. Would you be willing to lift that and let me attend the board meeting, and would I be able to have time to talk to the board? And she came back and said yes.
Okay. You also, when we were sitting there after we were waiting for the board to make its decision, and we were chatting there at the media table, and you also showed me your last couple of evaluations, and they were pretty glowing. It looked like you got good remarks from the then athletic director Matt McClellan, also from Jody Steinke and Todd Pettit. They all signed off on it, said, "Hey, good job, coach. Keep up the good work." So this is kind of, this was it's like taking strike one down the middle, and then they say, "Oh, you're out." Yeah. It's 1, 2, 3. So you guys were on your Club Muddy last week. We're discussing contracts.
Yes. And so one of the things that I learned from a professor in college was, no matter what happens, when you leave, whether it's your choice or you get fired from a position, you always ask for your personnel jacket, a copy of it, to take with you. Technically, you should review that once a year, just to make sure nothing gets put in there that you don't know about. That usually doesn't get done. But one of the things I've always done is anytime I leave, whether it's on my own or whatever, is to ask for copies of my file jacket. Now, your employees, we're talking like, if they went to their file jacket, is there a contract that they sign?
No, we don't have any contracts.
Okay. So I didn't ask for it that day when I left on the 24th because things were running through my head.
Sure.
So I emailed Lisa Otten the next day and asked her to send me a copy of my file jacket. I looked through my file jacket. I looked through all the copies. Two things are missing. None of my evaluations were in it, and there's no contract.
But you signed a contract. You never signed a contract.
I do not believe I ever signed a contract. So there is nothing in my file jacket that shows that I signed a contract.
And again, you were paid a stipend as coach, correct? As a part-time employee, you were not a faculty member, you're not a UPS staffer. You love the sport, you've coached a long time. I know you've had daughters who've been very good in the sport, and it's something you are passionate about. And this was something that and again, you had done 10 seasons, and then again, however you want to count COVID or whatever, but you've done 10 seasons. So, and again, without a blemish?
Without a blemish.
So this
and just to go to the evaluations, and I knew, so I contacted AD Chris Klingle because I knew I only had 4 evaluations in 10 years, and asked her to go through her athletic file because I wanted copies of those evaluations. And of course, she only sent me the 4 because I knew there was only 4, even though you're supposed to get 1 every year.
But to Chris's credit, she did send you all she had.
She did send me all she had. Now, one thing I want to make clear to anybody and everybody, okay? Chris Klingle is not any part of this.
Well, she just got the job.
She just got the job. She is wanting and understands the need for changes. She is, I think Chris is, and I told her the day that I walked out the building, I said, you're perfect for the job, and I think you'll do well. None of this is any reflection on her or anything that she had to do about it. She could only go with what the information and the resources that are given to her.
Sure.
I also, some of the stuff we get into, you're going to hear another name, and that's Ryan Clare. Ryan Clare can only deal with and do what resources that are given to him. I don't have any ill will against Ryan. I think Ryan should answer directly to the board and not to Ryan Wicker, but that's just my personal feeling. But again, Ryan Clare can only do what he can do with the resources given to him, and it's strangled.
And Ryan Clare sat down with Matt Shuckman and myself shortly after this all went down and kind of gave a big explanation of the facilities, what had happened, the problems, the rotten poles, the whole 9 yards. And he gave us a really, and again, he's a guy who's relatively new in the job as well. They've had some turnover in positions, they've had some retirements, and people filled in, or in the athletic director's case, Matt McClellan went to become the VOTEC director, and then Chris got the athletic director job. So you've got people here who are sort of stepping up and relatively new in positions. But it didn't take anybody who's kind of paid attention to QHS athletics over the last couple of decades. The football or the baseball and the softball fields have really not been touched in 40 years.
No, as a matter of fact, so part of my frustration, okay, leading up to this, you tell me school supplied or Booster Club supplied infield dirt.
I have no idea. I know that just got done though.
For the first time in 10 years.
Yes, correct.
What would you say if I told you that Booster Club has spent over $30,000 in doing nothing but buying infield dirt to make sure they have a safe playing surface, a quality safe playing surface, and a surface that would drain well enough in order to be able to get games in when it rained?
So that was all Booster Club funded, nothing from the athletic department itself?
There were 2 times that I recall in the past that the athletic department bought 2 semi-loads, both split half with baseball, half with softball. Now, I will say, and you can ask anybody that knows me, I am about the foundation. When I got there, it was a fishbowl. It would rain and it would hold water. And the only way, and you have to understand, we play on a very erosive field. I mean, you got wind erosion, water erosion, sun, everything that goes along with it. So when people see dust flying off there, it's dollars. I mean, it's not. So it's not about just being able to go, okay, let's go contract or see if so-and-so contract business has some black dirt that they can bring us.
Sure.
That doesn't work. It actually makes it worse.
No.
So the dirt that we get is actual infield dirt. It's a mixture of sand, clay, and black dirt. And depending on whether you have irrigation systems to keep it wet will depend on the percentages of the sand and clay with the black dirt. So our booster club over the past 10 years has paid out over $30,000, and I had been denied. I would ask and get denied. $30,000 for infill dirt, new bases, base pegs when we reset the pegs. For the first 4 years, we had to buy our own infield conditioner. Like if it rains, or you're supposed to condition, you're supposed to kind of condition your field every spring to get it ready. It just helps it drain. So softball, baseball had to buy our own infield conditioner and our own quick dry. That's basically, quick dry is a powder version of the infield conditioner, which makes it easier to soak up water in wet spots.
Sure.
Scott Douglas got that changed in, I believe it was 2019 or 2020. I was trying to remember that today. But before that, we were having to buy our own. So there's $30,000 just for that. Now,
one other thing I want to bring up, though, in terms of facility changes that I've noticed that I've seen over the last few years is the fact that there's the new concession stand storage facility. Who paid for that?
Concession stand storage.
Well, the brick building, they're not brick.
That was there before I got hired.
Yes. So that block building where it's, I mean, that's where they keep the chalker, and again, but it's concession stand. That's just baseball.
That's just baseball. Baseball has the back end of that so currently right now, the conditioner and the quick dry sets on the west side. Baseball has access to store their 3-wheel unit, which they had to purchase on their own. The school didn't buy any equipment. The school has not bought any field equipment up until just here recently for work in the field. I bought all my own and then reconfigured it to fit my tractor that I use for working the field. But baseball has that behind the concession stand where the garage door, so they can put their 3-wheeler in it, the Toro machine. They've got their baseballs and their shovels and rakes and stuff that are hanging in there. But as far as softball goes, our chalker, our rakes, our hand rakes and stuff, if they're not in the dugout, they're in what we call the outdoor cage.
And again, just to reiterate that, you had used your own tractor and equipment. Then once you were dismissed, the school district bought equipment so they could fix the field, work on the field.
From what I understand, they bought a mat drag and a spike drag.
Okay, but whose tractor are they going to use? Okay.
That I don't know.
Well, again, I think that. So what now? What are your thoughts? I mean, again, one other thing is, and there was a lot, as there is always on stuff like this, there was a lot of social media chatter, blah blah blah, whatever, and people are saying, "Oh, the girls should walk away." That's the last thing you want.
That's the last thing.
Last thing you wanted.
That's the last thing.
I mean, you wanted them to play. You support the new coaches. You want it to go.
If I found out caught wind of that there was a move for those girls, I would be the first one to step in front of them and says, "You're playing." And
that's what you told them that night after the thing, when they're all standing there crying, and you're saying, go work hard, play hard, you were saying all the stuff a guy who actually gives a damn says, and a guy who's a me guy would have said, "Oh yeah, sure, everybody go sit down and let's just fold the program," but that's not what you want, and that does the girls, it does nobody any good.
My goal is to make sure that the girls and the baseball team get what they've earned, not necessarily what they deserve, because quite frankly, under Title IX, both programs together, just quick calculation, they deserve about an $8 million project. I have, from almost day one, tried to tell every athletic director that I've had that your philosophy on how Title IX works is completely wrong. It is not sport to sport. It is across the board. And nobody wants to believe me. And I have talked to 2 Title IX attorneys, and I have talked to 3 in-town attorneys, and they all agree with the Title IX attorneys.
Well, I mean, when you look at it, especially on the college level, and you see football, but then you have to see a lot of schools have more women's sports just to balance the fact that a lot of these big colleges have football. So that's part of it.
Yeah. So right now, I mean, quick calculation, you can figure $4 million a piece, and I can run down through it if I'm asked. But some of the other things, But what I wanted to get to also and bring up is the softball program and baseball program is treated completely different. I have said for years that the softball and baseball program is treated equal to an elementary or less than an elementary playground. I have had where they have come in and popped the gates off the hinges and not put them on, so then I'm scrambling to get the hinges hung back up. We just had a situation where I had a pitching screen that we left on the field for people when they came out and use it, because I had parents bringing their kids out to hit on the field and stuff like that, and you'd tip it over so with the wind and everything. They got into it with lawnmowers and chewed it up, and nobody said a word to me. So it's just really frustrating. But some of the things that we face, so I've already mentioned the $30,000. If I told you that we had to pay, in the 10 years I've been there, $32,500 for coaches that other programs get paid for. Our junior high staff, they only pay for one coach. Every other volleyball, basketball gets 2 coaches paid for. Before Scott Douglas left, he was able to get, because of the varsity sport of the other programs, they get 3 coaches paid for at the varsity level. We were only getting 2. He was able to get that changed before he left. So not only are we raising money to buy simple things such as dirt, we're paying for coaches' salaries that the school pays for other programs. And they're just now getting into the point of we're building a $40,000, spending $40,000, $27,000 of it on a new pad. We got poles that are going to be, or I should say they have poles that are going to be installed with new cages. One of the first things I wanted to do when I first got here was to have outdoor cages instead of trying to work within the gym and
Sure.
that sort of thing. One of my arguments that I have had about the dirt situation, repeatedly, you spend $4,000 per gym, high school, Baldwin, junior high, to get the gym floors resurfaced, re-waxed every single year. I said, why cannot we get that same $4,000 for the baseball, softball field to buy dirt? I had an administrator look straight in the eye and tell me that's because they use it for PE. They use the gyms for PE, that's the difference. And I said, when was the last time you waxed the lower gym in the junior high? No answer.
Yeah.
So we're talking over $100,000 that these parents and these kids have had to raise just so they can compete. So my frustration level, and I can go through the complete timeline, and if you're willing to let me talk it out, I will. You will see why, with this in the background, and then you put it with the things that I was told, why I just hit a boiling point.
Well, I can certainly appreciate and understand your frustration. It's got to be really hard, and I get it. And again, the whole thing is when we talk about covering sports here and all that, and these kids all work so hard, and these kids are all just trying to have fun. And I know some of them have college ambitions, but most of them don't go to college. And you're just trying to provide, some life skills, some life lessons, and things like that. Just to have a good time and have a good program. And again, I mean, I know you feel like you have made some strides in this program.
Yes, last year was the first year that we had enough players to where we can compete JV varsity at the same time when we went on the road to Western Big Six. We have never been able to do that, ever. And it's going to prove out huge this year for the varsity program, simply because those JV kids got to go play in some high competitive full 7-inning games instead of, if and no disrespect, but some of the local schools that will come and tell us they'll give us 5 innings. And then when it gets time to play, they're like, well, we used all our pitchers. We'll try to give you 3, and then it's only 1.
Sure.
So having that was huge last year. And I would go into the varsity game, and I might only have 1 bench player and have all the rest of the kids down playing JV or playing on the other field. And if I needed somebody, since the JV fields are right close to each other, it's just a matter of sending somebody down and grab whoever I wanted and then get them in the game. But those JV innings, and I tried to stress this in the conversation when on that Thursday, are crucial. And just losing one is a huge difference, especially when, I said, you're wanting me to go out here and tell these parents that have raised these thousands of dollars that, well, because somebody didn't plan correctly, your kid might not get any playing time at home. Now they will. I mean, and give credit to Ann J. Heineke. I mean, she did with a schedule to where I think you mentioned the first 4 home games are going to be played at Avenue of Lights, and then she front-loaded the season with away games and back-loaded them with the home games, giving a little bit more time, because one of the things they wanted to try and do was start games at 4 o'clock or at 3:30, and I was like, we have trouble getting people to show up to run concessions at 4:30. Mm-hmm. And I said, you guys aren't supporting our program. We rely on those concession sales. And now you want us to start at a 4 or 3:30 start time, which I knew 3:30 would be out of the question. But I said, we rely on that money. I mean, we can't get around it. And I said, these kids play in front of their parents.
Mm-hmm. They're at work.
And they're at work.
Yeah.
And some of them may only get to come to a home game and not be able to go on the road. And you're taking that away from them, and you act like, it's not my problem.
Yeah, and again, let's be honest. When you're the outpost of the Western Big Six, the road games aren't exactly easy either.
No, it's kind of funny. Well, it's funny because somebody had said something to. We were up at UT one year, and a parent says, "I don't know how you guys do it." I'm like, "We come down there, 2.5 hour drive, and we're wore out by the time you guys do it." And I said, "Yeah, we do it 7 times a year. It's just kind of our thing." But here's one thing. So just to set this up, and I'm glad you said that. What sport do you think is simply the toughest sport to play in the Western Big Six?
I have no idea.
Oh, come on.
The toughest sport? Well, I'm a football guy. I'd say football.
Okay. What if I told you that in the Western Big Six, softball has 27 state trophies?
You said toughest. Oh, you mean competitive-wise?
Competitive-wise.
Oh, I thought you meant physical-wise.
Oh.
Like, well, then, because I just said basketball if you're talking about the trophies.
Okay.
But softball, okay.
Okay, so 27 state trophies.
Wow.
14 of those are state championships. That is what softball faces year in and year out. No other program, no other sport even comes remotely close to facing that kind of competition year after year after year. So those innings, not having those lights, a lot of people think, well, it's just 1 year. Well, here's the thing. So when I'm in the meeting with there on the 23rd, I'm actually feeling somewhat decent by the time, we get past the first 10 minutes and, everybody kind of settles in. And we're talking about what we would need to do as far as the next week, getting together with Chris and starting to work on the schedule and blah, blah, blah. We get to the end and I asked Chris and Jody, I said, what is the plan if the life safety money does not get approved? And the response was, we have no reason to believe that the life safety money will not get approved. I said, what is the plan if the life safety money does not get approved?
Yeah, you don't relying on the state of Illinois for anything that sure fires, flip a coin.
And didn't have an answer. And then that's, the meeting ended and I got up and left and went out to the weight room as I had kids out there working out. So, one of the things that really irked me was, so in early spring last year, I show up to get the field ready for practice and there's a surveying group. So I asked them, I said, what are you guys surveying? And they told me, and they said, well, it's for some project that they're talking about and thinking about and blah, blah, blah. I said, okay. So I went in, confirmed it, yeah. So what we're thinking about is redoing turf for both fields and doing maybe a building for practices and locker rooms outside to get you guys. Oh, great. Okay. So didn't think much about it. So I show up in middle of May And I arrive at the field, and there's 4 people standing out by the junction boxes. One's Matt McClellan, then AD, Riley Kane, who is the guru of electronics for QHS, and then 2 other gentlemen who happen to be Musco Lighting. So they were taking them around, and they were discussing the lights and the situation as far as what they're thinking and planning, and they were asking as far as power feed and where it comes into the school and everything else. I'm like, okay, well, that, you know, if you're going to put new turf down, it would make sense to go ahead and do new lights. So then, June, July goes by, August goes by, we're in our junior high season, and then that's when I get the email that they want to have a meeting to discuss the application of dirt. Great. I mean, we won't have to spend $4,000 on dirt this year. That's awesome. So we have a meeting on September 5th to discuss dirt. We get done. We come to, you know, how much baseball needs to get, because baseball needs a lot more than what we needed, because obviously I kept mine up. Arranged the situation. Brian, Claire agreed to it. We get done, and I looked over at Coach Lawson and I said, have this whole thing, this project with the turf and the construction, I said, has anybody talked to you to get your input? He said, no. So I looked at Ryan Clare and I said, Ryan, I said, when do we, the foremost knowledgeable people who know about turf, know how it's going to apply to what's going to be best for the situation here, how it's going to apply to our seasons, and that sort of, when do we get pulled in to ask and get our input? He looks ahead, pushes his glasses up on his nose, he says, you'll be brought in when it's time to pick your logo. I said, okay. I said, the reason I ask is, I said, I know lights are on the agenda. I said, I don't need lights. Now this is before, then I soon find out. I said, I don't need lights. I would rather take the $200,000 that you're planning on lights and applying it to my turf field, or to a turf field to where it's a full turf and not just a turf infield.
Right.
Then that's when I'm told that the lights are completely separate from the rest of the project. And I said, well, can you explain? He said, we have somebody coming in next week to inspect the lights. If they are deemed unsafe, they literally have to come down the next day. Not 5 months later, the next day. And he phrased it 3 times. I said, okay. I said, so then what's the plan then? He said, well, life safety money comes in, we get in, we'll get the lights put up and get them put in place. I said, okay, that sounds reasonable. Now, the reason why I bring this up, because a lot of people don't know this. So I knew what the answer was going to be when I asked him when we get brought in for our opinion, our input, being the 2 most knowledgeable. Back when the new track was being built, Matt McClellan was the head track coach. He had went, I believe, twice, maybe 3 times, to ask to be brought in to the project, to review the drawings, discuss, and just be involved so he knows instead of hearing it through third hand. He was denied.
Wasn't he the athletic director?
Not then. He was the head track coach.
Oh, okay.
So he was denied. So he's out. Their track's under construction. He's out. It's getting built. He happens to look and measures the pit length is too short.
Yeah, I remember that.
He said that he had to actually go back and have somewhat of an argument to get them to extend the pit length, because he said they'll literally jump over the top of the pit and land out of the pit. So because they would not bring him in, it cost them an extra $12,000 on the project. Now the decision was made to go with the thinnest mill covering for the top of the track. They just replaced, because it got tore up the first year. And I know there's 2 other tracks in this area that were built at the same time One I know for sure was built by the same company who didn't go with the thinnest, and their tracks still look brand new. The philosophy at QHS is to go as cheap as possible. Put new siding, paint the windows, make it look nice. We'll worry about it down the road. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we have that discussion. I'm like, okay, that sounds fine. So get to October 23rd. Get called in to discuss the girls' varsity locker room, changes that are going to be made there. We get done with the meeting. I asked Ryan Claire again. I said, do you have a minute? Can we go out in the gym and can I talk to you? He says, yeah, sure. So we go out in the gym and I asked him, I said, Ryan, I said, you told me back on the 1st of September that those light poles and lights had to come down literally the next day. And I said, they're still standing. I said, what is the plan and what's going on? They're coming down next week. Okay. I said, so what's the plan? He said, they'll come down. Musco, he said, and this has been confirmed by more than one person, Musco would prefer to have the ground frozen. So when they come in, they do as little damage to if they have to get on the inside, mm-hmm. they do as little damage as they can to the field. I said, okay, that sounds good. I said, but what's our plan here? He said, the plan is to have new lights up by the first of the year. Awesome. That gives us 2 months in case something, whatever, sure. 1st of January, timeline works well. So we get to Christmas break. I go to Chris. I said, you've been on the meetings. I haven't been updated since October. I said, Ryan told me that we would have lights up by the 1st of the year. I said, what's going on? She said, well, since we're going into Christmas break, remind me after Christmas break and I'll try and find out. So we come out of Christmas break. I said, hey, just reminding you, I said, can you find out what's happening with the lights? Are they starting soon or what's going on? So on the, the 14th of January? 13th of January, Chris is notified by, I'm assuming Ryan Wicker, that there will, maybe Ryan Claire, that there will be no lights for the upcoming season. She informs us on the 14th, when I say us, Coach Lawson and myself, mm-hmm. On the 14th that there will be no lights. I said, this isn't acceptable. I said, I have been led to believe that there would be lights come our start of our season on March 20th or something like that. I said, so what is the plan? And she says, well, we have to get together and we'll have to sit down and figure out the schedule. And I said, so Ryan Claire and Ryan Wicker just kind of like, we did what we could, it's your problem. I told Chris, I said, this isn't your problem. But I said, the problem's going to be, you're going to catch all the heat on this. And she said, yes, I know. So we discussed, we talked. She said, I'm going to do everything I possibly can. She said, I've got a phone call into Musco about temporary lighting. While I was there, Musco called, and they exchanged some numbers. And because the person that called her back wasn't in the rental part of it, she was going to get in contact with them either over the weekend or on Monday. And I told Chris, I said, here's the thing. I said, even if we have to move our games or whatnot, I said, this is still a problem. I said, these seniors deserved to be able to play on their home field. These kids deserve, because of the amount of money that they're asked to raise every year, this should not have happened. I said, I feel betrayed and I feel like I've been directly lied to. And she says, you mean by me? I said, no, not by you. So before I left, she says, please keep this under wraps. We do not want this to get to the public. So I get the email or the text message on the 21st, officially telling us there will be no lights. The bid from Musco for temporary lighting for both baseball and softball came in at over 6 figures. And so they weren't going to do that. Then I made the post on the 23rd. I got called into that meeting, and we've already discussed that. And then I was handed my suspension letter on the 24th. Now, the thing that has gotten me through over this time period that has come out, Muddy River reported on the 31st in an article that the first submission got denied because of it didn't interfere with the shutdown or causing the school to shut down, so it couldn't be filed in an emergency situation. Then it's reported that they had made a second submission of $300,000 that was approved, and then a third submission was done for $223,000. My question is, you had $300,000 in your hand. You could have put lights on one of the two fields. You could have taken a lot of the pressure off your AD. I mean, you could have went and got a bond for $25,000. We could have done baseball, which I know that just my wife happened to ask me, so if you were in that meeting, who would you choose? And I said, I'd probably at first want to say, well, let's flip a coin, but in all honesty, and I know a lot of people would want to argue about it, would be probably go baseball, because they got the toughest. It's much harder for them to work around and do their schedule than it is. We have options. I mean,
their games are longer.
Their games are
and
longer.
Also, they had the one pole that was the primary problem too. Correct.
Correct. Well, based on the article, yes.
Well, but then when they saw the pole leaning, and then they went to check it out.
Leaning.
Well, but
it's been leaning for years.
I understand it. But then they said they had to go up, and then they tried to take it down and took down the fence.
Based on the article. Yeah. So for me, and it would be a tough sell to the parents of the softball program, because, oh sure, it's boys again, they get preferential treatment. But if you sit down and you think about it, if you had that $300,000 and you went out and got $25,000 more, you should have put the lights on the field. It would have made it easier for Chris Klingel to reschedule, and for us to redo softball. Yes, we would have grumbled. I'm not saying that we wouldn't.
That was the point. They said we can't. I believe in that interview that Matt was here with Ryan was here. I think that they said that we can't do one and not do the other.
But they should have. In my opinion, they should have. Or as you guys brought up last week, Ryan Wicker could have went to the board and asked for a bond. If they had $300,000, they could have asked for $225,000.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not the full $500,000.
Yeah.
And this could have been done knowing that, because they were confident that they would get the life safety money passed, then once that was received, you pay off your bond.
Yeah.
So, you could have done it and held on for 6 months, and all this would have gone away.
Well, I think
now the only other thing.
One more thing, then we got to put a wrap on this. So, time-wise, I got other stuff to do. We got other shows coming in and scheduling.
That's fine.
It's nothing personal. I could sit here and talk to you forever.
The only thing that I was going to add was, in your article, Ryan Clare says they didn't get the quote from Musco until October. If they did, how did I know my lights were going to cost $200,000 in September?
Okay, well, we'll ask him to follow up on that. So, Darrell, I appreciate your time.
Sure. You said you had one more thing.
No, that was it.
That was it?
Yep.
Thank you, and I want to credit Casey.
Yeah.
At the board meeting the other night, it was her argument that allowed for the 4 players to go back and talk to the board.
Yeah.
Before we went in, she made a ploy to allow for those 4 players. They only wanted to let 2 or 3, and I said 4. I said they're already nervous. I said they need the support.
Yeah.
But it was her that got them at least access to go back and get some of it off of their chest.
I did? Yeah, now I remember my one more thing. What now for you?
Well, I don't know. I just found out I've been helping John Wood softball. If you know Kelsey Thompson,
mm-hmm.
Okay, she was an assistant for me for 1 year. And she reached out to me in August, I think it was, and said, I know nothing about pitching. Is there any way you can spend some time and let me stand and listen to you? And I said, yeah, sure, fine. So I was going out to John Wood whenever I didn't have high school stuff, once, maybe twice a week, just to help with the pitchers, to kind of talk to them and go through what they knew, what I saw, and that sort of thing. So then obviously when I got suspended, just to kind of keep active and things, I started going every day. So well, this past Saturday they had a game down in Centralia, Illinois, and the assistant coach, Coach Sky, was not able to go. So I volunteered to go, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. I have had a few offers. Do you know Brian Wassman?
Oh yeah.
So Brian said he got a phone call from somebody wanting to know about that Henze guy. You think he could coach baseball? And he said that he told him, says, I don't think baseball is his. I mean, he could coach baseball, but I don't think baseball is his thing. So
Right.
I don't know. I'm going to take some time to think about it. There are a couple high school offers that I shouldn't say offers, inquiries.
Sure.
That are somewhat intriguing. But my first plan of action, as I said earlier, I want the program to stop being treated like it's a playground and get what they've earned and be treated like they are part of a varsity program, both them and baseball. I mean, they took the school came in and took the JV baseball field away from them, promising that they would rebuild it, and they never have.
That was when they did the expansion at
Yes,
QHS.
correct. And they tore down a brand new concession stand that was built and never offered to reimburse them the money for the materials. Something needs to change. I have a whole bunch of other stuff that I could get into as far as my feelings on the board and personnel and things. And if you ever need a guest for your club money thing, just let me know.
Well then, yeah, because I'm sure Ashley and Brittany would like to spend the same time that I did here with you. So Darrell, thanks a lot, man.
Yep, I appreciate it. No,
Thanks,
thanks.
sir.